The next bonus episode of WTF is available now at WTFpodshop.com. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but we did a double taping at Comics last month, and this one was billed as the dirtier show. And man, it did not fucking disappoint. This is filthy. I mean, Dave Attell was on fire. I've known Dave Attell for 20 some odd years, and he was just sitting there spinning around like a filthy genius, whirling dervish, like nonstop. It was hilarious.
Hey, Mark, this is kind of like Comic-Con without the cool sci-fi movies. You know, this is like a glum festival. I've never seen... And poor fucking Joe, you're like one guest away from working at a Whole Foods somewhere. I mean, honestly. Is this The Apprentice? Like, once you bring out the last... But do you know any people who are black or just someone with a pussy? I mean, is it all white people? Is that it? Only white people on a podcast.
Joe DeRosa, genius. Anthony Jeselnik was great. Kurt Metzger, Robert Kelly. I mean... And then Amy Schumer comes out, and she was a trooper, man. She was just backstage, and she came out after Attell and just kicked ass. But it is filthy. It is definitely an adult show, but it's definitely great. And it's a rare, I mean, DeRosa was hilarious. Everyone was great, but it's a rare bit of Attell. If you're an Attell fan, I would definitely go pick this up at WTFpodshop.com. It's $2.99. Or you can just go to WTFpod.com and follow the link to the shop. And don't forget, anybody who gives us the $250 one-time premium donation, that's where you get 2 T-shirts, three of my three CDs, the special Best of WTF CD, some stickers, a signed card. You also get access to all of these premium episodes. But go to WTFpodshop.com, get the filthy show, enjoy.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it. How? What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF. What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Are we doing this? Let's do this. Okay, what the fuckers, what the fucking ears, what the fuck buddies, what the fuck nicks? Whatever the fuck you want to call yourself, I'm Marc Maron. This is WTF. Thank you for listening. I didn't spend that long watching the Chilean miners being extracted from the hole, but I thought that if you were a little out of touch, it would have looked like some sort of new game show that I'm not sure what the rules are, but I guess everybody wins. They come out of the hole, they come out of the machine, they are embraced by their loved ones, and everyone's a winner. This is one of those rare things. I think what provoked me to think about this was really yesterday I heard on NPR that they had decided an order as to who would go out first, which miner would go out first out of the 30-some-odd miners that were in there. And an order was decided. I'm not sure how it went, but in the story that I heard, I thought it was interesting that they were actually fighting they were fighting about who would be the last one out of the hole. Who would be the last one out, which means someone was gunning for the record. Who would hold the record of being, trapped in a mine for the longest amount of time and living in the history of the world? Someone was going for the record. So it was a game show to a certain degree in that someone wanted to win that title. I assume that the guys who got out first are the guys who were like, let's just get the fuck out of the hole, didn't really give a shit about that record, and probably told the guy, it's like, all right, dude, whatever you want to do. I just want to get the fuck out of the hole. And this is one of the most exploited disasters I've seen in a while, because it's a rare disaster where everybody lives, where everybody gets out, and they know everyone's going to get out. Once that hole was drilled, they got equipment in place, and it is so exploited to the fact that apparently they sent down a book a couple of weeks ago in training people how to speak publicly. They wanted these guys to be good for the press. The world's press is there. Oakley donated some expensive sunglasses, so they get a plug. I heard for about 10 minutes yesterday, where the machine that they made, the elevator that was created to pull the guys out of the hole, that was a California company. I mean, it's just a rare opportunity where a disaster can be branded so efficiently because they know that everyone's going to live. You don't see this kind of stuff where they're, sending boats out and pulling bodies out of water, after plane crashes. Well, that boat, you see that claw that was manufactured right here in San Rafael, California, pulling that half a torso out of the ocean. It's a wonderful machine. We're going to talk to the creators. That doesn't happen. And it also is weird to me that they have this self-centered sort of competitiveness that's just based on publicity. That the fact that somebody was fighting for the opportunity to be last out of that hole is some sort of weird corruption of the competitive spirit in my mind. I mean, I guess it's a good record to hold, but for that to transcend the idea that you just want to get out of the fucking hole, to me is baffling. Needless to say, I would rather be first out of the hole. I would rather be first just about anywhere. I have that problem. I need to be places early. I go to the airport 3 or 4 hours early. I go if there's a restaurant that has a buffet, I'll be there early. I don't know what it is. I need to be first. It's stupid. It's embarrassing. I was at my brother's kid's bar mitzvah last weekend, and they opened. It was the party was at a zoo. It was a zoo themed party. It was at night, but they basically just had cold cuts and shitty food, kids food, because it's a kids party. And after some little event they had at the party, they announced the food was out, and I literally ran for the food. And I was the only adult on a line of about 20, 25 kids, first in line to get food. Not a proud moment, but let me tell you, man, that event was something else. I could not believe the possibilities for emotional and family chaos. I couldn't even fathom it. Now, this was the interesting revelation about the 2 days that I was there, the 3 days I was there. A couple of things happened. Was that I went over on the Saturday. We had the day off after the service. I went over to see my dad, and I said, "Look, Pop, why don't we go over and hang out with the grandkids? You want to go see the grandkids?" My father literally said, "What do I need it for? What do I need that for?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. They're your grandkids, so you may want to spend some time with them." Yeah, he goes. My father literally goes, "A lot of people, they get something out of that. Does nothing for me. I get nothing out of it." I'm like, "Okay, that's good to know. I guess I could have assumed that, Dad." "Well, so what do you want to do?" He says, "Well, look, I called about 3 or 4 places in town. I'm looking for mustard slacks. Very hard to find mustard slacks. I need mustard colored pants." I'm like, "Pants, like dress pants?" "Yeah, but mustard colored. I had a pair. I love them." Now, you have to understand, my father is a borderline hoarder, and I don't know what defines hoarding. Is it still hoarding if you build literally a wing onto your house to put the shit that you are hoarding in an organized fashion? Is it still hoarding if it is relatively organized? My father lives in a small house. He built literally a 2-level cedar closet in the middle of a house that took up half a bedroom so he could put all his suits in there that he doesn't wear, but he claims to wear all of them. So he needs mustard pants. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how the fuck could you not have mustard pants? You have 900, whatever. But I said, okay, mustard pants. If this is how we're going to repress our emotions, if this is what the focus is, literally, we're there for a family event. I go see my father. He's like, "We're going to get mustard pants." With everything going on, with all the other stress, he wants to get mustard pants. So we go to a mall and we go looking for mustard pants. And he finds something similar to mustard pants. They're not quite mustard pants. He drops $300 on a pair of pants that aren't even quite mustard, and we leave the mall, and he feels placated somewhat. Is that disturbing? I don't know. Am I kind of like that? Sure, look around. I'm surrounded by 9,000 books in a room full of clutter. Am I a hoarder? Is this just a museum to my inability to experience emotions fully? Is this just a museum to my need for control? To feel like I have an empire of some kind, an empire of half-read books? Am I just like that guy? God damn it. It's those moments where you just realize, like, holy shit, I want to spend time with my dad only so I can try to figure out what not to do from this point on. But the kid had a good time, and, everything worked out all right. Truly the high point for me, and this is between us, but one of the high points was I had to take a cab from my brother's house to the airport in Phoenix. And he had called a cab, and I walk out, and a half hour later, there's a discount yellow cab. He thought he had called the yellow cab, and this car was like maybe I'd like to say it was a Nova or some ridiculous old shitty car that had the discount yellow cab on the side. There's a couple driving it, a man and a woman. They throw my stuff in the trunk. I get in. The air conditioner doesn't work. It smells like cigarettes, and these two are in the front. And I start talking about comedy, and the woman's like, "Yeah, I want to do comedy once. I was in Los Angeles, and I have this joke." And she goes on this long joke about the Pillsbury Doughboy and the Keyboard Elves basically dealing drugs, and that people need, it was a very ornate, elaborate theory/routine about the Pillsbury Doughboy basically being a crystal meth dealer. And then the guy tells me couple of off-color jokes, a bad gay joke and some other joke, and then I noticed that there's one good tooth between the two of them. All their teeth are rotting out. And then I realized I'm fucking being driven to the airport by tweakers. I mean, like tweaker taxi. And she's noodling on about these big theories about politics and Pillsbury Doughboy, and I'm like, holy shit! I think that a better time to call that cab company would be in the middle of the night, so they're peaking. But I wish I had the fucking mics on. I wish I could have just pulled it out. Literally, all their teeth were rotten, and it took me a few minutes to realize, like, I didn't even want to give them my credit card. So I didn't, and I thanked them, and I gave them, like $50. And I know where that went. Into more theories, I'm guessing. So look, on the show today, we have Jonathan Ames. Now, Jonathan Ames is someone I've known of and worked with over the years, and I didn't know his writing until I got an opportunity to interview him. He created the show Bored to Death, which is now on HBO, but he's also written a few books that he's very known for being very revealing about just about everything. He's definitely a too much information kind of guy, which I am as well, in terms of using his own life and his own experiences to entertain and to provide you with literary content. I don't know how else to say it. But it was interesting to talk to him because I had not really talked to him. And one thing I didn't talk to him about, which I really want to bring to your attention, because he gave me a copy of it, he gave me a copy of his books as well, is a graphic novel called The Alcoholic, which is really a masterpiece of graphic novelism. Graphic novelication, graphic novelizing. And it's about an alcoholic, and it's somewhat autobiographical. And after I read it, I'm like, shit, I wish I could have talked to him about this, but I do recommend you purchase it. Quick reminder, tomorrow night, UCB Theater, Los Angeles, California, live WTF with the amazing and infamous Charles Fleischer. I don't know if you remember him from back in the day, but one of the great, peculiar, absurd wizards of comedy. We also have Brendan Burns, who you heard here from Australia. We also have Aaron Foley, very funny comedian who was in Almost Famous with me. Andrew Daly, who is on Eastbound and Down right now, a very funny guy, and of course Jim Earl. And those of you in Texas, I want to remind you that on October 18th in Austin, Texas at the Parish, we're doing a live WTF with some Texan comedians, many of who you may know if you're from out there: Lucas Melendez, Martha Kelly, Eric Krug, Bryson Turner, Brian Gutman. Those names ring a bell? That will be the same crew as well in Dallas on Tuesday night at Trees. That's October 19th. We're adding Paul Varghese. Or Varghese. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I feel bad about that. But those are the Texas shows. And, of course, Wednesday, October 20th, we will be at Comics in New York. Big shows, great shows, 7:30 show. We've got Eugene Merman, Kristen Schaal, Jesse Klein, John Glazer, Sam Cedar, maybe John Benjamin, maybe Will Arnett will stop by. I'm not sure. 9:30 show. We have Mike DiStefano, Rich Voss, Bonnie McFarlane, and Louis Black. Exciting. Please come to those.
I was at this huge HBO party, and I have a cat on my lap now whose name is Minimus. But I think I'll toss him off because he'll distract me the whole time. Are you allergic to cats?
No. I got like 3 of them.
Oh. Well, he's my landlord's cat, but he loves to come up here and hang out, which causes my landlords are very sweet, but he loves to be up here, and so I'm like his naughty older brother who's like third floor attic, room he hangs out in.
Does your landlord get upset or jealous, or is he fine with it?
Well, they're fine with it. They're like, oh, we know you were out of town because Minimus was hanging out with us again.
Uh-huh.
See, he gets full reign on all my bad furniture to just rip it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wonder why I chose to have these feral cats. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find I resent people that like me too much, or anything that likes me too much, so I like the struggle.
Mm-hmm. And, I imagine, maybe in listening to just a little bit of your podcast, I mean, and just since you've been here, you love the word resentment and resent. So it's like these cats must be like a mirror, like tough, don't come near me. I'll come near you when I want to.
Yeah.
So you admire them.
Well, I wish I wasn't like that. The weird thing about my relationship with you is that, and I'm talking to Jonathan Ames, by the way, is that, we've been on the peripheries of each other for probably 25 years.
I don't know that long, but
20, maybe.
Well, let's see. 2010. I didn't start really performing in New York but that was on my own, early 90s, and people didn't start dragging me into stuff until late 90s. So, but I've known, I think at least 12 years. Right. So I'm into linear stuff, but so in performance-wise, I think we first started leading parallel lives, late 90s maybe.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
And what were the first performance things you were doing?
My first performance things, I was doing my own shows at the Fez.
Yeah.
This started in 93. I was working the door there, and I started doing my own monologue shows at the Fez, and I would have like college friends read or do some weird little acts. And I did that for years, up until the time the Fez closed in 2002, I believe.
And it was always written stuff?
Well, my monologues were never written.
Right.
I would do outlines of them.
Right. Yeah, sure. That's the way I work.
Like the way Spalding Gray, I think, might have done it. Or, but
did you know him?
I did, yeah. And I acted in this play based on his life, this posthumous play that his wife put together, and which went on to Off-Broadway. I didn't make it to the Off-Broadway part, but I was part of the initial group. Yeah. And so I got really intimate with his stuff, and I met him a few times, and he was very much a hero to me. Yeah,
I think that in retrospect he is to me too, and I think you are as well, and that's why, somehow or another, like, despite the fact that I've known who you are, I've chosen to get a sense of who you are by gossip and hearsay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's taken me, like, you were just listening to my Robin Williams interview, and I'm sitting up cramming on your books.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've known this guy kind of for like 20 years or whatever it's been.
But why? Yeah, but yes, yeah.
And what and the things I always heard, like, my assumptions are, and now after reading the books, that because I do pretty honest stuff, but I don't have the balls that you do in living my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reading your stuff thinking like it's going to be this, really hard edge, kind of like, I'm out there fucking everything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then the humility of it is fucking awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know about having balls because I feel like most
you talk about them.
Well, yeah, how tiny they are. Yeah, the whole thing is tiny. I just did, well, I think I'm average, and sometimes, girls have been nice about it, but they might be, lying. And that's always the advice I give to women in a relationship. I tell women, if you want to hold on to a guy, just like every 3 weeks or so, just tell him he's got a beautiful cock. Like every 3 weeks.
So beautiful is the word.
Well, beautiful or not, whatever they want to say. Oh, God, I just love your cock. Just say it like every 3 weeks or so. Not too often so the guy gets cocky, but just enough to keep him coming back for more. And I think that, a woman will hold on to a man. Because a lot of women do have a hard time holding on to guys.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I have a hard time holding on to women.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but like the Spalding Gray thing, because when I look back at who he was and what you do and what I try to do, that, his honesty was certainly different than the type of honesty you were after, isn't it?
Well, I was just in Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland, at the film festival there.
You didn't perform there, did you?
I didn't perform, no.
It's a little rough.
I didn't. Yeah, I did do a Q&A that seemed to go over well, probably because I was enunciating. No, but then I probably sounded completely crude to them. But I saw this Steven Soderbergh documentary about Spalding. And because it was at the festival, and I actually watched it in like a little video thing, and I cried the whole time because I knew him and I knew how it ended, and I had been in his work. But they showed some of his early stuff, and there was some raw honesty in there that I had not seen. Like, he talked about sucking some guy's cock and I did not know that Spalding Gray, like, on stage, and he started doing this bobbing motion with his head, and I was like, fucking Spalding, like, that is so great, because, like, I don't know, he must have been in his early 30s, he was in Europe,
Yeah.
like, somehow, like, he was traveling with this gay guy, he thought he should try it, and he went in there, and then he was just doing this thing, and suddenly I'm sucking and I'm going, I'm gay, and he's like, I was just like, oh man, because the Spalding usually was just like, and so my eye was moving to the right, and I thought of my mother swimming in, Providence, Rhode Island, and how her eye would move to the right, or, I mean,
Right,
that was
exactly.
very bad Spalding.
No, that was close.
Because we're in my kitchen, and, but you were saying, so you've known me for a long time.
Right, and my assumptions
what was the
about
gossip and hearsay, though? I'm curious.
Well, no, it's not really gossip and hearsay. It's like, from what I gleaned, because I know Reverend Jen, and I've known, a few people that we know in common, and that, like, I started to feel bad that I missed these points in your life and in your performance, and also reading your stuff as much as I should, because, it's great, and it's got a lot of heart to it, and it's very honest. So it was really stuff like, when I talked to Reverend Jen, she talked about the mangina period, which I know nothing about.
Yeah,
and
that was a good period in my performance career.
What was that about?
Well, there was one of the later phases is that he would stump me on stage. He would.
This was a guy that calls himself Mangina.
Yes,
and he wears a mangina.
He's kind of retired because he realized it was a flawed project, but he put about a decade of his life into it.
What was the project exactly?
Well, he would wear this prosthetic vagina. I think early on he claimed he thought he might sell it to prison populations and cross-dressers. It was a wild, ongoing performance art piece. Insane. I mean, he was fingered by like 1,000 people, because he made this hole out of which he would pull his scrotum, and he would call this, it did look like labia.
Yeah.
And he would craft these beautiful vaginas, sometimes getting the molds of real women, and he would mold their vagina if they shaved, and then he would wear their vagina, make a little hole, and pull out his scrotum so it looked like another level of labia, and people would finger that. And a lot of times girls would finger him and think that it was all plastic and not realize they were fingering his balls. He actually has a smaller cock than mine, so like if they even hit the root part of it, I don't think they even noticed. Yeah. But so he did this for years. He's also missing a foot. He's a great painter. In fact, his paintings, you can see those are two of his paintings. He's a wonderful painter.
Yeah, nice.
But he's missing a foot, which led to his fascination with prosthesis. He's a true great bohemian. And anyway, a few years ago, just 2 years or so ago, 3 years ago, we were both going through an out of control phase, and I don't really perform that much anymore. Once in a while, monologues, and I can hardly read from my books anymore, but I just needed to be more outrageous, or I didn't want to make people listen to me anymore, but I liked having Mangina attack me on stage, and he would take off his prosthetic foot and stump me because his foot is missing, but his shin bone looks like a huge phallus, but a really scary one. Looks like a big bone, and it's got this knob at the end. They were able to hold on to his heel, when they sawed off his foot. And he would stump me, like I would bend over. He would wrestle people. Like he wrestled this blind woman.
With the mangina?
He would be wearing the mangina.
Nothing else, really?
Sometimes nothing else. Weird hats he might put on that he would build. Sometimes the foot would be off. So one time we had this wrestling match against this blind woman who I think studies jujitsu, and he snuck around from behind and tried to attack her from behind as I was going, on the count of 3. And he snuck around, and then he would lose, though. He was a good sport that way. But this other time we did this little performance. This was like 2 years ago. I wrote about it in my most recent book. I sent an email to friends. And this girl who, well, she puts on these shows that nobody comes to. So there was about 7 people in the audience, right?
Is that what he said?
Yeah. And this...
It wasn't Reverend Jen.
No, it wasn't Reverend Jen. I don't want to say the woman's name. She's very sweet in case she hears this. But 7 people come to this thing. She's dragged me into it. We're backstage. Patrick's smoking pot, taking pills, drinking wine, mangina. And he's going to wrestle this other girl, right? And he's wearing this full see-through weird skin tone bodysuit. He's got the mangina on. He's got garish makeup, a wild wig. He's all hopped up on 8 different chemicals, And I'm to be the ref of the match, right? So the match starts in front of this audience of 7 in this tiny little space. It was about 2 years ago. And he goes berserk on the girl, and he actually does almost kind of try to body slam her. And she gets upset, runs into the audience, right?
Yeah.
And he then sees me, and he goes nuts, rips off his foot, begins chasing me, and begins to hit me with this thing that he wraps his foot in. It's called a stump sock.
Yeah.
And this thing smells. You know what I mean? At the time he was living in Queens, you'd be on like the subway for an hour and a half. So his stump sock just reeked of like the 1,000 insides of like a high school basketball team's pairs of sneakers. I mean, he starts hitting me with this stump sock, and I used to start laughing. The smell is so bad that I became paralyzed by laughter and the stink.
Yeah.
I fell to the ground. He's very strong from having lost his foot. The rest of his body got great strength. He also worked on the railroad at one time, pounding ties. He's a very strong guy. He's had 47 restaurant jobs, bartending. He's powerful. Yeah. Very skinny though. Yeah. And, smokes like 2 packs a day, though less now because he's pretty broke. So anyway, he manages to rip my pants down, and he got his stump against my butt for real. Now, we had faked this once or twice at Bowery Poetry Club, like, hey, Mangina's going to stump me. But now, on whatever pills he was on, he was rabid. He got that stump against my ass and began pounding, and I was laughing, but I was really getting violated. And the girl, the nice girl who was hosting, who was, of course, hosting naked, jumps on Mangina. He swats her away. I can't fight. My pants are down. The stump is against my butt. The nude girl jumps on him again, momentarily distracts him. I crawl away. My underwear is ripped. My pants are ripped. And I stagger backstage. And then he is so rabid, he comes backstage, then he comes back out to the audience and begins to finger himself maniacally.
Is he hopping, or does he?
He's hopping. He's able to hop on that one foot pretty well, or maybe he put his foot back. Oh my God! I said, and so I wrote in this email to a bunch of friends. I'm like, we had our greatest performance ever last night. This was beyond punk rock.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was stumped by Mangina in a wig with garish makeup, going completely nuts. And the next morning, when I went to the bathroom, now he didn't actually penetrate, but he must have pounded against me. Yeah. It hurt.
Yeah.
It hurt. I can't, because by the next morning I was, I'd maybe forgotten about it. I'm going, why is it hurting me to go to the bathroom? I'm like, oh my God. He really pounded against it. He went nuts.
He wanted in.
He overwhelmed me. Yeah.
That was the last performance?
I didn't let him. We haven't done a stumping since. Or maybe we did, but at Bowery Poetry, but I didn't trust him not to go completely nuts again, because I think he wanted to set a Guinness Book of World Records of terrible art of having stumped his best friend, or one of his best friends.
So at that point, when you say you were out of control, you're just fucking,
I was out of control. I won't go beyond that. I was misbehaving on stage and off stage.
And now, when in terms of that scene, because I think that, I'm about the same age as you. Do you feel that whole Lower East Side, art, punk, performance art thing, I think by the time you got there, wasn't it sort of already, hadn't it sort of passed?
Well, when I kind of was getting into it, late 90s, PS 122, and I think it was still thriving,
Who was working then?
Well, Spalding Gray was still doing stuff. He would still do
small
stuff.
Spaces?
He would still open shows at PS 122. I even saw Bogosian there,
right?
Late 90s, PS 122. But yeah, it was, and Karen Finley would still do stuff. It was like they were like the last three. Danny Hawk was doing his shows there. But it was starting to wind down, and by now it really. I don't know of the scene. Maybe there's young kids doing really cool stuff. I'm not aware of it. The Bowery Poetry Club remains the one last place of some good, deep Manhattan nuttiness. I think. I don't know what's happening in Harlem or some of the new neighborhoods that maybe have a little bit of an art scene. I don't know. But Bowery Poetry Club's still pretty wild. Reverend Jen still has an open mic there, and the people still holding on in Manhattan, though a lot of them are in Brooklyn, will come out and just get up there. And I love those open mics.
Do you think that's something?
And there's another one called Skits and Tits on Monday nights.
And what's that?
That's also open mic. It's the same crowd. It's like, it's just this Bowery Poetry Club open mic free for all. And
I think I was, because I was a comic, that there was some part of me that condescended to that. That there was, to me, I couldn't really tell the difference between, somebody who really wanted to be funny and couldn't quite figure out how, and was just, pushing these limits, poorly for effect, but yet they weren't fundamentally talented. But I think that was me being condescending, because I think the raw humanness of wanting any kind of attention and pushing those limits is pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, like you go to a night of these open mics, and I've done it the last few years, and then sometimes when I've been busy, I don't go for months, but you'll have like 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours. I'll go really late. People will sign up, and people will be raw, boring, not great, but then there'll be this like gem-like thing, some nutty guy who maybe is autistic, who will just dance wildly and run up and down, and it's just fun, and and the whole thing gets very lively, and the whole cast of characters, this guy who's, he's sometimes called Touching You or Mayor Brodeur, this guy?
No.
Bloomberg had him thrown in jail for basically being a pest. He harassed Giuliani and Bloomberg for years. He's completely mad, but he claims to have written 2,000, pop songs, and he's often getting thrown in jail for harassing people. And this one time he came out of Rikers after a week, and he showed up at the open mic, and it was like the returning anti-hero. Because everybody hates him there. You know what I mean? But I happen to love it. You know what I mean? He just come out of Rikers, and Reverend Jen brought him on stage, and they used to be boyfriend and girlfriend, but she can't stand him. I mean, like a decade ago. And so there's still kind of a raw, vital scene there. It's the last bit of it. And I haven't been on stage there myself probably since a stumping like 2 years ago.
And that you talked about that in the newest book, which is essays, and it's The Double Life is Twice as Good.
Yeah, which isn't a very good book. I got into this fetish a little bit of just, wanting to put out books like every year, every 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
just because
it's working.
I know, but I guess it was that thing. I wanted to be the writer who had a lot of books. And so even if some of them were mediocre, there might be one good piece in there, because, I like that. I like writers that have a lot of books that I can just delve into them for a while. But I kind of lately have been regretting that book, The Double Life is Twice as Good.
It's a good cover.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, there's a lot of pieces in there I'm embarrassed about now.
You're embarrassed about something?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really remember what I've written, like, when you say, oh, you were so honest, but I was maybe honest a long time ago, but maybe also I know that it's not honesty because I'll tell certain truths to not have to tell greater truths.
Well, I think it's sort of something I want to talk to you about, because in reading the first collection of essays,
What's Not to Love?
Yeah,
that's a half decent.
But would you consider that at that time when you're out of Princeton, you did some graduate work and you're working odd jobs, but you want to be a writer, know that. I mean, that's what you want to do.
Yeah,
and you know how to write.
Yeah.
Now, your heroes at that time were who?
Well, that book, What's Not to Love, is composed of columns that I wrote for the New York Press.
Yeah, right.
So every 2 weeks I would have to produce a column. And at that point, too, I had written 2 novels, but now I was doing all this nonfiction, which kind of, which I hadn't done before, but I had been performing nonfiction. I'd been doing the monologues since 92. So when I got this column, like in 97, I sort of took what I'd been doing on stage and started turning it into prose. So in a sense, an early hero was Spalding Gray, but prose-wise, Bukowski had a column for the LA Free Press.
Right.
And so I very much based the terse style, the honesty, the creating a persona based on myself, based on Bukowski's columns that were collected in a book called Notes from a Dirty Old Man, which was the title of his column.
Right.
My column was called City Slicker. Though What's Not to Love would have been a good title for the column, which became the title for the book. City Slicker was so title.
Do you ever get that thing though, where because it seems that as weird and dark as some of this stuff gets, and it's not that dark, the stuff I read, because you sort of counter it with humor and your own realization of who you are. I mean, when you write, is there a bleakness happening now?
Well, not really, because all I'm really writing these days is the TV show.
Yeah, I want to talk about that.
And so sometimes I'll let the characters, like in this new season, Ted Danson
Bored to death.
Yeah, has a speech about his mortality, and that gets verges on bleak, but Ted does it so beautifully, and it was more human and sad. But yeah, I mean, if I wrote a novel now, maybe it would be bleak, but I'm just not thinking in terms of
writing books.
I mean, I want to write a thriller. I mean, I want to write just genre stuff now. I feel like I think I can't expose myself again for a while. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember exposing myself in the 8 books I've published, but I want to hide. I don't want to put myself out there anymore. I don't want to use myself as a narrator or a character anymore. I mean, in Bored to Death, the character has my name, but it's a very fictionalized, comedic, exuberant version.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know that I could ever go completely dark. My first novel is pretty dark. That was kind of it's called I Pass Like Night, and I wrote that when I was like 22 to 24, and I was very inspired by Last Exit to Brooklyn by Hubert Selby, and so that was kind of a dark novel, though I guess there were funny moments. And then my mom said to me, "You're so funny." Not that I am, but she thought I was or something. So she said, "So funny, why don't you should write funny things." So then my second novel, The Extra Man, was a long comedic novel with some darkness, I guess.
I want to ask you, as in advice, what you have learned about this the male gender and putting yourself together.
And what I've learned about the male and putting myself together.
Well, because it seems to me that when I read the books and your reflections on your cock, your reflections on your balls, the size of it, your reflections on your hair, your decisions to to not medicate in a way that you wouldn't have control over it or feel it, your decisions to take up boxing, to spend time with transvestites, that there has to be some overview at this point, whether you want to be honest or not, about sexuality, about gender, and about what it is to be a man.
Okay, that's a big question. I mean, using myself as a case study, I don't think I could talk about men. I could talk about me.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, and I was writing a blog for the TV show, and I've said this before. Most of my sexuality comes out of, psychological trauma and things that may have gone on in childhood.
Specifically, what do you pin it to?
Well,
your relationship with your mother?
No, I mean, both parents, both of whom I love.
Yeah.
And so I feel sexuality for me has been, it's an easy phrase, acting out, but acting out pain and trying to recreate psychodynamics, usually of humiliation, to get to a place of profound self-loathing. But sometimes, though, there is a great comfort in the humiliation because, okay, now I'm at that place that I want to be.
I can't get any lower. I'm on ground level.
Yeah. But there's also an aspect to it. I was reading some book on people with sexual problems, and I only read the introduction. I tend to only enjoy genre fiction. So once I pick up non-fiction, I peter out after the intros.
You've learned enough. Well, you get it.
I guess, but I feel bad that way. But anyway, this doctor wrote about people seeking an obliteration of self. And he was into the idea of people with fetishes because he thought that they might be able to achieve ecstasy through the obliteration of self, like a man who's so into just shoes that he will completely lose himself. And I think in normal heterosexual coupling, you can have perhaps obliteration of self. Let's say you're going down on a woman and you completely lose yourself in it and just the carnality and just how beautiful she is and how sexy and you're down there and I don't know, you lose yourself. You're like on another planet. But I think fetishes or perversions sometimes, like, maybe it's more, maybe you get there faster, or maybe it's just going down on a woman is the same thing as licking a shoe. I don't know. No, I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing for the women in the audience, but I'm talking about, like, the obliteration of self. And I think that's what I've sought out, was the obliteration of self. Like, I had to get away from myself. And these things are like Alice in Wonderland things, the things that might be outside the norm of human sexuality.
Like transvestites?
Well, I always referred to people that were old as transsexuals, but not necessarily that. I'm talking more in vague terms, I guess, but just the seeking, like, just losing yourself because, you know, I mean, I'm familiar with your work, and we're very lucky guys, you know.
Right.
We're middle class clowns who have the luxury of trying to figure our brains out. You know, most of the planet doesn't get to do that. You know what I mean? This is a very elite position. So I'm very lucky that I've like ended up in motels outside the Lincoln Tunnel trying to obliterate myself. Oh, poor me. You know, nice Jewish boy. He's never gone hungry. So he's so troubled, he's got to obliterate himself. But that said, this is probably an elite audience who has iPods that can listen to this, and so they can identify. I mean, this is our struggle. I mean, Neil Young, you know, had a good line, you know, when you feel embarrassed about your problems, they're your problems. You know what I mean? And so I think one of the things that I try to address in the TV show, I guess in my own world view is, but maybe this is a weakening of the male species as expressed through my intellect. You know, maybe men are getting weaker and weaker and all this estrogen in the water, but maybe a weakening of the male is a good thing since men are so destructive. I mean, they're good at building highways, but they're also good at blowing up highways.
Right.
So I guess what I've been moving towards in my 2 seconds on the planet would be greater parameters for masculinity or maleness. Now, I don't think I'll achieve it in my life.
But like the Neil Young quote, at some point, you are who you are.
Right.
Again, I get to this point where the example I have recently from a therapist, the only thing that blew my mind, you know, recently in terms of an intellectual idea in relation to my own self-loathing, and the obliteration thing, I think, is something we share in the sense that I think that my parents had no real capacity for nurturing in a proper way, so there was no emotional boundaries. So in order for me to even define myself as an individual, there was a struggle against them. So the boundarylessness was obliterating. So I seek that, and then when someone starts to push through my boundaries, I react with hostility. That's how I fight obliteration. And then ultimately you obliterate yourself because you're sitting there alone and you're angry, and then the self-loathing comes. Yeah. But the guy who said to me, he said, what you're in search of is primal union.
Yeah, well, that sounds similar to that obliteration
Right.
itself. And that's what I was talking about, like going down on a woman. You know,
That's
can
it.
be a primal union, and that's why I like armpits also. I like to get in there.
Yeah.
And I like intercourse also. Sometimes well, anyway, I feel like I tend to be more oral, but anyway,
It's all right. But wait, the thing about going, can I just be specific? The thing is there something about going down on a woman that, you know, the connection of that and knowing that they're losing themselves and you doing that is a complete turn on.
Well, yes, I mean, I actually wrote a line that didn't make it into the show, which is like, someone asked the Ted Danson character, something like, you know, how many women have you been with? And he's been with like a lot of women. But he said, but the thing is, he goes, my saving grace is that I like to go down on women. Yeah. You know, but then I forget how I wrote it, but he said, but then again, you know, even that is selfish.
Right.
Because I enjoy doing it and I enjoy pleasing them. And he's like, is there nothing decent in the world? Can't that at least be a selfless act? But you know what I mean? But it comes down to you know, we're these prisoners in these bodies, and everything does sometimes come back to self, even acts of charity, even acts of kindness, like going down on a woman.
So what about the boxing then? That seems to be the opposite.
Boxing. Well,
what was your boxing name?
The Herring Wonder.
Yeah.
Well, that came about. This guy challenged me in '99, a performance artist, and long history, but and from the moment he challenged me, I thought, I'll call myself the Herring Wonder. I was living in the East Village at the time. I had 2 years there. I got a rent-controlled apartment from a friend or something, and Russ and Daughters, the herring shop, was like 2 blocks away, and I would, when I could afford it, I'd get herring there, you know, once a month or something. And
which kind?
I just always liked it with cream sauce, you know. But I've since gotten all kinds.
You like the Majas herring?
Is that the very salty?
It's a little weird. It's almost sweet and spicy. It's got no real sauce on it. It's marinated in almost a red vinegar.
Yeah, and that one maybe I don't go for as much. But I've had sometimes just like, you know, just not even in cream sauce. I get it at the Russian baths. I don't know the kinds of herring, even though I'm called the Herring Wonder. Yeah. I do like it though. It's a good fish.
Yeah.
And so I thought it would, I just thought I'll be a reincarnated Lower East Side Jewish boxer called the Herring Wonder. Of course, comedic because I'm not a boxer. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to seem like I was tough. So I gave myself kind of an untough name.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, but I boxed twice in my life because maybe this is part of your question about being a man. And I also have fantasies of being heroic, and again, like I don't maybe have the guts to be a fireman. I'm not good with tools anyways. I wouldn't be able to unfurl the hose. I would get wrapped around my head. And
you can't be the Herring Wonder as a fireman.
Yeah, but I'm not bad at sports.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can't operate a hammer, but I've been good at tennis and other sports for whatever reason. That part of my brain functions. So I wanted to box because I wanted to be heroic, and boxing, the way it's captured in cinema and on TV, so I got into boxing for that reason. And then, it's very painful. I mean, when you get hit in the head, I'm a little worried about it. See, those words came out funny, because I probably got concussions. Yeah. And that leads to dementia. Yeah. And all these NFL players.
You really think you did? I mean, you boxed that much?
I definitely got, I probably got 2 or 3 concussions just training. It doesn't take much, I realize now, to probably get a concussion. But definitely in my fight in 99, that was 4 hard rounds, 3-minute rounds, and I fought with a broken nose because I had broken my nose a week before in training. Probably got a concussion then. It was that was an obliterating shot in the middle of my face. And the guy pounded me pretty bad in that fight. It was like 4 rounds of beating. Now, I got him pretty good, but he outweighed me like 25 pounds. He did bleed, though. It was a wild night, though. Matthew Barney, the performance artist par excellence, was one of the judges, and I was supposed to come into Havana Gila, and I was carrying a jar of herring, but for some reason the CD jammed, so it seemed like everything was against me. And it was in a synagogue, though, the Angel Lorenzon's, a converted synagogue, and then in the second fight, though, 8 years later, luckily the guy didn't hit me in the head once, and he was a huge guy. I don't know, I just lucked out. Though in training, my head had gotten fucked up pretty bad because my jaw was out of line for like 2 months. And I was really paranoid that this big guy I fought in 2007 would, because my jaw was like this, is a little bit like a typewriter. Yeah. And I had sparred with a number of guys, and including some good, Gleason's kind of gym fighters. Yeah. And I kept getting hit in the jaw, and my jaw was out of line. And so I went into the fight without a line. I thought, shit, one more blow, and maybe it's going to break. And a trainer there, and I was wearing this headgear, this kind of old headgear, to protect my nose, so my nose wouldn't get broken again, because my nose sticks out so much. So I had this headgear that had a bar down the middle, but the thing was so old, it was about 25 years old. It was like a worn leather mask. So I think it was increasing the force of the blows against me. Yeah. And this trainer said, yeah, I think that thing's fucking up your jaw. You better get another kind of headgear. And I said, well, but then I'll probably get my nose broken again. He said, better to get your nose broken than your jaw broken. But I was scared to change my headgear going into the fight. Like, he told me this the day before the fight. I tried to get a fancy mouthpiece, maybe to help my jaw. Yeah. And it was right before an HBO meeting. The day of my fight, I think I had an HBO meeting in the afternoon. About
the first
about
project?
Bored to Death.
About Bored to Death?
Yeah. And it was just like, but I had a fight that night, but I thought I can't cancel the meeting because I have a boxing match. I don't want to seem totally unstable.
But you didn't think about canceling the boxing match?
No. I don't know. I'd been training for 2 months. So I went to that nice sporting goods store on Broadway near Union Square.
Paragon?
Paragon, to get a better mouth guard. Yeah. And they showed this diagram of why you need a mouth guard, because actually the tip of the jaw touches the brain, right? Yeah. And so you need to keep the jawline so that that's why guys get knocked out when they're hit here, because you got brain right here. Yeah. Like the brain is a little bit shaped like Florida. Yeah. It comes down, and so like the tip of the brain is down by the jaw. And I read that right before my fight, and I see this diagram, and I didn't buy that fancy mouth guard, and I end up fighting with this old leather thing, and the guy I fought, Craig Davidson, nice guy, big guy, he'd once been on steroids, he was huge. Somehow he never hit me in the head the whole fight. That was only 3 rounds, 2-minute rounds, so it was only a 6-minute fight, and I did beat him pretty well. But I felt bad when I hit him hard in the head, and I saw his eyes blink, and he wobbled, and I said, sorry. Like, you know what I mean? I wasn't really cut out to be a boxer,
You okay, buddy?
Yeah, and when I would train, the trainer I would hit people, and I'd say, sorry. The trainer kept saying, stop saying you're sorry. So I recreated one of my boxing matches in Bored to Death, and Jason Schwartzman, when he knocks out John Hodgman, says, "I'm sorry," and the trainer says, "Don't say you're sorry." But so that was from real life. But so the whole boxing thing is about a hero fantasy. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, I used to play war and escape from prison, and I had this nice woods near my house, and I just always liked to play the hero in my childhood games, and I think the boxing was like an adult version of that.
How did it feel to get beat up, though?
That sucked. The fight in '99, I was depressed for a long time because I probably had a concussion. I think my ribs were bruised. Look at that. See, I want to say ribs were bruised, and I said rubes.
Yeah.
See?
What do you think?
I might early Alzheimer's.
No.
My ribs were bruised. My neck was all screwed up. My jaw was screwed up then too. My nose got re-broken. It was this swollen, it was like a uni face in the middle. My friend had sort of betrayed me, who I fought, because he wasn't supposed to go for my head so much because of the broken nose, because no fighter would fight with a broken nose.
Right.
I guess it's dangerous, and maybe I would have ended up looking, you know, like Raymond Kelly, the police chief. I saw him the other night at a thing. He's got a good boxer's nose. But he went for my head immediately. In fact, pinned my arm in the first round and hit me in the side of the head 12 times, like uncontested. He was completely out of control. So at the first round, like there's videotape of me like in the corner. I already looked depressed, and my trainer named Harry Kite, who is in this Oscar-nominated film against On the Ropes, and he was just really he'd sparred with Ali, and I think he'd done time for manslaughter, but a beautiful guy from Bed-Stuy, and he was like, "Jonathan, get angry." He's telling me, "Get angry," and I'm like, "What?" You know. And I've often said, you know, I go straight to depression, because when I hear you talking about hostility and stuff, I have it, I'm sure, because I'm troubled, but I submerge it so much. I don't get to hostility. I need to work on that. It might be too late though, because you know I'm getting close to 50, and but I need to get more hostile.
See, this is the thing I think about us, that there's this idea that, like, you know, I there's part of me that thinks, like, you know, I'm going to have six-pack abs someday still, that, you know, that I'm going to resolve these issues, that my anger will just dissipate as I get older. And I talk about it on stage now, that you get to a point, if you do go to therapy, if you have enough self-awareness, you're like, look, I'm probably not going to unfuck myself before this thing is over. Yeah. So if we can temper this, and it seems to me that what you're saying...
Well, it's like being like Obama. I often think with my own personality, I've got to manage myself like a country that's so screwed up. Right. And so you try to minimize the damage or something. You know?
Well, yeah.
Or you go, it's like, go for the worst alternate. Yeah. I mean, the best worst alternate.
Be an emotional centrist. Like, you know, like there's going to be these warring factions that I can't really accommodate. But maybe, you know, if I stay somewhere in the middle, I can manage my life for the rest of it.
Or you'll make choices like, okay, this will cause pain and is screwed up, but this is the best you can do considering that you're coming from a screwed up place.
Right. And so, you try to minimize the damage you're going to do to yourself.
Yeah, and others.
Yeah.
And what's cool, though, and partly, and I feel like when you're talking about spending all this time in your head, it makes our days feel very long, because also we're not 9 to 5 people.
No, I know.
We don't have to go somewhere and like communicate with others. Yeah. We're just alone, tormenting ourselves all day long.
I know.
And that's why like it feels like one's been... On one hand, things are zipping by very quick. Yeah. On the other hand, it's like every year feels like a trauma, because every day I'm in this, because I don't have to go anywhere. And you know, I was broke for years, and now I'm not broke, but the life is the same because I wasn't fit for a job.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean?
But as it turns out, that is our job.
Right. Our job is to torment and then try to be clowns, to make people laugh, to feel a little less alone, to, you know, try to make something. You know, these are the things I cycle back around to. But again, it's a very privileged life.
So let's talk about the show and how that came about, because when I saw it, it's a very unique show. It's sweet and it's a curious and interesting structure for what is essentially, you know, an episodic comedy. And when I first saw it, I'm like, you know, Jonathan Ames said it. This is going to be filthy. But it's not, because you've created this world that has a lot of refinement in it, and an ability to get into grit, an ability to get into some, you know, modern problems and how people live their lives with the comic book artists and Schwartzman, who is, is a pretty an innocent in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, he's the innocent quester in my mind.
And it seems to be finding an audience. Now, is this a way for you to honor this desire to do a genre piece and also to almost it seems like it definitely seems like there's some resolve in it. It's a happy show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a comedy, you know,
Right.
and it's not a dark comedy,
Right.
You know, I guess it's in that sense it's light, and I think that's the kind of comedy ultimately that I like. You know, I mean, I'm a big P.G. Wodehouse fan. I like the comedies from the 50s. You know, Some Like It Hot. You know,
Right.
these
Yeah,
things
sure.
that feel like champagne.
Right.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
champagne humor.
Yeah.
Is the kind of humor that I guess I like to put out. And in terms of the filthy, I guess I felt I had done that enough. I didn't want to be filthy anymore, or didn't feel the need, or it's filthy enough.
You might have grown up.
Yeah, and I mean, like this book, the subtitle was "What's Not to Love: The Adventures of a Mildly Perverted Young Writer."
Yeah,
and I kind of sort of came to regret that in this sort of funny way. Not that any of this is meaningful, because who cares? And I'll be dead, and no one will remember. But for years, it was like perverted writer Jonathan Ames.
Right.
Perverted writer Jonathan Ames will be at the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
Because I put that word perverted, and at the time, you know, Eggers. A heartbreaking work of staggering genius had come out, and I thought, well, this will be like a heartbreaking work of staggering genius. But in my mind, I'm like, The Adventures of a Mildly Perverted Young Writer. I thought people would like that, you know. Yeah. Instead, I just got labeled for years, and you know, I'd be like, yes, perverted. Every interview began with perverted writer, you know, and then I mentioned a venereal wart that I had like in 1987, and so recently, like last fall. The New York Magazine does a profile on me for Bored to Death. Yeah. Jonathan Ames, who's written about his venereal warts. I was like, that's the opening sentence to this profile? I haven't had that wart. It went away. It's upsetting to me because, you know, women can really get messed up by warts more than men, you know, but I had that wart a long time ago. It's not come back. I don't think I transmit it. You know, I tend to be very safe, but so sometimes these things haunt you. And so with the show, I didn't want to be warty or filthy, and I didn't feel the need to be. Now, the second season, I did push some of the sexual stuff a little bit more. Yeah. But not dirty, but just more in, like, people struggling with odd sexual issues. But nothing like what I had done in my essays.
Do you regret this?
I don't regret it, no, because, first of all, you know, people don't really pay attention too much to other people. Mm-hmm. So, you know, nobody really reads my books. It was nice of you to cram a little the night before. Or they read it and they forget it. And I don't know. I feel, I don't regret it. I don't really regret. The present is so difficult. I can't regret the past too much, though recent past things I'm pretty sad about. But no, I don't regret the books.
So the TV show's been rewarding? You like working with Ted and Zach?
Oh, those guys are amazing. Jason.
Jason, yeah. I know Zach, and he's a sweet guy.
Yeah, the funnest part about the show are those three guys. I mean, and like the show, they've become very good friends, and there's a lot of laughter, and so...
Laughter's great. I just started... It's one of the reasons I do this. Like, I love... watching my peers. I love listening to people tell stories. I like having conversations. I like being. I like laughing.
You're great at this, man. So,
thanks.
How do you make money off these podcasts? Is there a way to make money?
Things come in. You get advertising. I have people who donate. We're starting to sell some premium episodes. It's difficult, but it's not quite a living yet. But I seem to be doing something. Like I'm an isolating kind of guy, but in my heart and when I was a kid, I always loved talking to people and hearing people's stories. And somewhere in the middle of my life, I got jaded and cynical and distant and hostile. And it went away, and now this thing is sort of it's
because you're really nice. Because like because you were bringing up that we've known each other, and you were nice to me. I always felt like maybe you didn't like me sometimes, but, you know, and I figured you were lost in your own world because it was often in the context of performance, and whether or not you felt you had done well. You know what I mean? It wasn't anything necessarily to do with me.
I was sort of a hostile guy earlier, you know, before.
But you're very good at this, and so you should. I imagine this. You know, you get a radio show, which could be cool, or just a talk show, or you're just having fun with it. And that's the main thing.
I'm creating a library of something.
Yeah.
Now, the last time I met you, and now I know the story, but I was very surprised because we ran into each other on the street in front of John's Pizza over there on 6th Avenue, and you introduced me to your son.
Uh-huh. When was? Oh yeah,
it was just on the street, and I said hi, and he said, "This is my son." I'm like, I had no idea he had a son. Then I read the book, and there was this moment where
a couple of years ago, though,
right?
Did I just park a car or something?
I don't know. I can't remember time that well.
Yeah.
But you deal with something in your book that, in my mind, at that age, you found out that you had a child from a single sexual encounter, and not very. It didn't take you very long to accept responsibility and actually enjoy the fact that you were a father. How is that relationship?
It's good. He's going to be 25. So
and you were 22 when you found out?
I was 23 when I found out. And
it was a one-time thing with an older woman.
Yes, very nice woman. But yeah, one time, and then I got a letter.
Yeah.
I got a letter when he was almost a year and a half old, and I had just graduated from college, just sold my first novel, and which I had to double in size, and then I got this letter and kind of had a little bit version of my own breakdown and ended up in rehab and all that. But then I became his dad, and it's been, a very wild path, and there's regret there because I would have liked to have been not a part-time dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I didn't have the circumstances, the way the cards were dealt, to be a full-time dad, to give him everything that he needed emotionally. But he's in school now, and, lately we've been emailing, he was slow to get onto email. He's not a very technological kid. He's a really good kid, a solid young man, very good to my parents. And so, but it's interesting, it's different phases, we went through a period where we were brothers, and we had this shared language, and for years we played this game called Sabotage, where we would just sabotage each other all the time, and he was much better at it than me.
Like what?
Yeah. Well, he would, I would do most of my parenting at my parents' house.
Yeah.
So I would be in my childhood, my sister's room, and he'd be in my childhood room, and I must have had to go into New York for a day, and he taped everything I had to if I had a book by the bed, I went to lift it, it was taped. If I went to put on a slipper, that was taped. But he taped it so I couldn't see what was taped. You know what I mean? Went to move the computer mouse, that was taped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then things under the sheets, and then things would fall on me. So we would do this stuff constantly, and and it was we had this little coded language that we would use with each other, and that's kind of disappeared in a way, And I think we're both feel sort of shy to bring it back up. But, one of the things we do is go to movies together. And whenever we go to movies, if he goes to the bathroom, he'll come in and purposely knock my legs over or bang against me, or he'll sprawl in the seat so that I have to squish over. He'll fart on me. You know what I mean? So there's still some of that, but we're almost more shy because, he's a man now. So... And it's weird to maybe do that stuff, which was just our playing.
Has he come down to the set or anything? Or
he has both seasons and the pilot. I think he's a little bored with it now, because after the first one or two takes, it gets very redundant.
Yeah.
But he came this year, and I think he's proud of what I've been doing. Because I haven't felt like he's really very capable, he can build things, and I have felt insecure and inadequate as a role model. But I think, and he's studying leadership stuff in school, and I was touched. He said, "Well, you're like a quiet leader," because he observed the dynamics on the set, and I was really like, "Whoa, he does think something, well of me," because I often just feel so. I'm always been waiting for him to reject me, but. So it's a difficult love relationship, you know what I mean? It's not, but anyway.
You're a sweet man, Jonathan Ames.
I could have done better. But what's one cool thing about the show is I'm able to take care of him financially in a way that when I was younger I couldn't. And it was good timing because he's in college, and a lot of kids nowadays it takes longer, so I can pay for it now.
Yeah.
You can see I I mean, this is a nice place, but you know, I mean, I'm still living the same way that I have for like 11 years. I've been in here, and I haven't really known what to do with my money yet, because you know,
it's pretty new.
Yeah, like what? I guess I could get new shoes, you know.
Well,
so
I mean,
I had someone order me 3, because I've come to like, so I ordered 3 pairs. Now I never could have done that before, but I don't like to shop, so I got 3 pairs of shoes arrived.
The same kind?
Yeah, the same kind. I don't know. They're comfortable.
Well, I think you could probably move into your own place if you want.
I know, but I would have to clean this place up. I'm kind of trapped in a disorganized cycle of stupidity. But anyway, so that's been one of the best benefits of the show is like that I can. It doesn't make up for the hand he was dealt not having a full-time father, but at least I can sort of take care of him now.
And it seems like you can take care of yourself too. And it's great talking to you, man.
Oh, likewise. It was really nice of you to come over. And
well, I'm happy for your success, man.
Thank you.
That's Jonathan Ames, a very sweet guy, a very revealing guy, and his books are great. I can't recommend enough that graphic novel, The Alcoholic, which I didn't talk about because I didn't do my research. Let's do a little business. Of course, as always, we've got some, wait for it, pow! Oh, man. Yeah, that's a mess. JustCoffee.coop, available at WTFpod.com. And I do want to, please, I want to try to get you guys to get on my mailing list. If you go to WTFpod.com, get on the mailing list. I'm doing that every week. I guess I'm just so fucking proud of myself that I'm being responsible about keeping you guys aware of what's going on, that I want you to be on the list. And if you can, make a donation. Become a subscriber. $10 a month will get you a T-shirt and some stickers and a signed thingy. And if you do the $250 one-time premium donation, 2 T-shirts, my 3 CDs, a special WTF Best Of CD, access to all our premium content, some stickers, and you can be my friend forever. But please, open your hearts, open your wallets, help us out. We do run on donations, and we're happy you're enjoying the show. A couple other quick follow-up announcements. Tomorrow night, UCB Theater, Los Angeles, with Charles Fleischer, Aaron Foley, Jim Earle, Andrew Daly, Brendan Burns. Going to be an interesting show, I guarantee you. Monday, October 18th, in Austin, Texas, at the Parish. Tuesday, October 19th, Dallas, Texas, at Trees. Come on down if you can. Wednesday, October 20th, New York City, Comics, big shows. Louis Black on the 9:30, headlining that. And Eugene Merman, Kristen Shaw, John Glazer, Jesse Klein, Sam Cedar on the first one. It'll be fun. I feel like I'm plugging a lot. I got to stop. I got to go. Okay.